Hey guys, I'm not just talking to myself today. No, we're here together. We're here hanging out and waving to each and every one of you. I'm gonna talk today about the difference between what binge eating is, stress eating, emotional eating, mindless eating. This is not an easy topic to talk about, and I wanted to clear up some stuff because, to be honest, there's a lot of stuff to clear up. There's a lot of things to understand about what is different and what is similar about all these different labels. But the reason I'm talking about it is because I'm doing a talk on Saturday. It's a workshop. It's free, so you should definitely come hang out. It's gonna be an hour and change. We'll do some Q&A. Yes, we'll do some Q&A. And I'm gonna be talking about 3 practices that I personally used to end my struggle with emotional eating. And I've had a lot of people come up to me and be like, well, I don't emotionally eat. Like when I'm sad and I'm really upset, I don't like sit on the couch with a bucket of ice cream and cry into the bucket of ice cream. I don't do that. So should I come to this? Like, what is this really about? So I started to realize some of the terminology that I use and that you use might be different, but it's just semantics. And at the end of the day, we're all talking about kind of the same thing, or in some way, some of the habits or practices behind it are similar. And either way, at the foundation of it all, this is the point, the foundation of it all, I'm kind of like skipping to the end of the book before we start the first chapter. Anyone do that? So regardless of what label you call yourself or how you identify, it really goes back to, is the way that I'm using food a way to disconnect from myself, a way to disconnect from my emotions, a way to disconnect from what's happening around me in the present, a way to disconnect from something that I am avoiding? Do you use food in a way to disconnect from life instead of get present and enjoy and be in the moment of life? So that's what we're going to talk about today, so that you can maybe understand a little bit more. If even at the very surface level, this is something that touches you, I invite you to come to hang out and check out my workshop and do some really cool exercises, not like the bicep building kind, but the soul building kind. And I think you'll walk away with some really powerful stuff. So the question of the day is there a difference between binge eating, emotional eating, stress eating, comfort eating, overeating? I thought of every single term that I could possibly think of. If you could think of more terms, please share. What are ways that you would call stress eating? Compulsive eating? For a while, because I have struggled with binge eating, and I'll get to what that looks like for me in a second, I had trouble even saying that word out loud, because to me it was so personal, and so the visual that I had that I connected to binge eating, saying it out loud was like admitting I just did these horrible acts and I was embarrassed and so full of shame to even admit it, to even say the word. Now I have done a lot of work. I have grown from that pain point. It's no longer a painful thing for me to speak about, although it was an extremely challenging time of my life. It was also the time of my life where I was struggling the most with depression and anxiety. And now I have done so much work. I feel so far from that point, that part of myself, that it's something I can talk about with distance, with empathy and compassion, but know that sharing my vulnerability is potentially freeing somebody else from their struggle. So that's what this is all about. I haven't washed my hair in a few days, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't put baby powder in it or dry shampoo, so this is what you're getting. okay? This is real. I just came back from my walk outside because I have to take myself on a walk every day. And it just keeps me happy and calm. I'm like a dog. And, but you guys know what I mean. And I listened to a great podcast and I got some fresh air, and it was almost raining, so I got my walk in before it started to rain, and now I'm energized. I had a snack, and here we go. Okay, so is there a difference? No, not really. There is not really a difference. The long answer is yes, there is a difference, and I'm going to go into what those differences are. So I just want to preface that what I'm about to share, it's not going to go into like the full depth, root cause, the trauma, the pain that is behind why somebody chooses to sabotage themselves or consume food in a way someone who binge eats does. Food addiction, just like any other addiction. Bye, Mark. Food addiction, just like any other addiction, can cause serious distress and sickness and upheavals to somebody's life. And so what I'm about to share is meant as just a general description to start to bring awareness to how you may be using food. So I'm going to have a few different scenarios of what I have categorized as stress eating, etc. So the first one, stress eating. You put on the news, this should sound familiar, and you start to hear of all of the tragic things that are happening in the world, and you start to build up that fear, that anxiety, that fear of helplessness, that you can't do anything about it, you don't know what to do, you feel scared, uncertain, unsafe, at risk, and you go into the kitchen, you break out a bar of chocolate, and you start eating the peanut butter right from the jar. Another example would be avoiding doing the pile of work that is just building and building and building, and filling this procrastination energy and time with food. Please chime in if any of these sound familiar, or at least they make sense to you. Even if you don't do them personally, I would love for you to comment if this is something that you have at least can identify with or connect to. All right, emotional or comfort eating would be eating in response to boredom or stress, fatigue, tension, depression, anger, anxiety, or loneliness, a way to fill the void. Eating food to soothe, feel comforted or cozy. I feel sometimes emotional and comfort eating can overlap with stress eating. Sometimes when we're stressed, all we want to do is feel safe and comforted. So for sure, those two can overlap. So an example might be you're tired of sitting in front of the computer for a few hours. Now you're bored and you're just like, I need to do something different. And your brain goes to the kitchen to grab a bag of chips to keep you company. Another example might be to after having a really stressful day at home with the kids, you just need to have that one meal. Like for me, it used to be Taco Bell. Taco Bell, go out, get Taco Bell and relax. And I deserve it. And it's a treat for getting through the day, which comforts me. Another example would be eating for others. So this would be saying yes to having a piece of food, a meal, when offered it because you want to please the person or avoid displeasing them. An example might be you're somewhere and somebody insists that you have a piece of cake. Maybe they made it, maybe they just like feeding people, I don't know. And you actually don't want it. Maybe you don't even like this particular cake, but you say yes and eat it because you don't want to make the other person feel bad for having said no or rejected them or whatever. An example of mindless eating, mindless eating I would define as eating without paying attention to or enjoying what you're eating. So I know that this is probably one of the most common ones is mindless eating because I hear people we do so many things mindlessly. We do so many things on automatic. Eating without paying attention. So think about this, like you're watching TV, you're eating dinner at the same time, and you're not really paying attention to like what the action of the food that you're putting into your mouth, the chewing it, the tasting it, the swallowing of it, and you finish in just a few minutes. And you don't really feel full, so you're gonna go back for more, but you didn't even intend to eat that much. Your body didn't even get a chance to catch up to your full cues, which take a solid 20 minutes to hit you. And you're disconnected from your hunger and your full cues because your mind is focused on the TV. Overeating. So I feel like overeating can happen with any of those things that I just mentioned. But any of those things I just mentioned, including mindless eating or eating for others, stress eating, comfort eating, they actually don't have to be you overeating. You could eat out of stress. You could eat out of mindlessness. You could eat out of wanting to eat to please others, etc. Eat to comfort yourself, but it doesn't mean that you overeat to which I would describe as eating more than your body needs to be nourished with food at that time. You could eat something out of stress, and it may not actually be overeating. So overeating, any of the above, like I said, can be considered overeating if you enter the territory of eating more than your body wants at that time. So if you notice, I'm referencing a lot of like this internal reflection, what your body needs at that time. Not what does my fitness pal tell me I need, not what does the meal plan tell me I need, not what does Weight Watchers or whatever this magazine tell me I need. What does my body tell me I need right now? And that's where the disconnect is. We are so not used to, it's so strange for us to rely on the internal, and we are always looking outside of ourselves to determine what it is that we need. Meanwhile, we know all along, but we've lost the ability to connect with what that is, or we don't trust it when we do hear it. Overeating is actually quite common, and I wouldn't say it's normal, but I would say it's common. I don't really know what normal means, but it usually happens like at Thanksgiving, specific events, parties, gatherings, holidays, and it's more than often than not, well, so-so, something that you kind of consciously do. You're like, yeah, I'm eating, I really want this special dessert, or like it's Thanksgiving and I'm definitely gonna eat all the things. So it's kind of a conscious choice in the sense that you're like, we're doing this. Yes, let's do this, right? Like I'm at a party and it's with this group of friends who I love so much, and there's all this food and all this delicious wine and all these special things, and I want to make sure I taste all of them and I want to enjoy the whole moment. So I know I'm going to overeat this on this meal. Excuse me. Now, I'm going to share with you the difference in a scenario of what binge eating looks like. So this is not exactly my story, but it's based on my story and a few other true life events. But I've had many days like this, or close to this, or worse than this. So this is an example of binge eating. Imagine leaving work after having a really bad day, and the only thing that you can think about is going to the store, getting that bar of chocolate, that special one that you love, and going home to eat it. So you go to the store, you grab the chocolate. On the way out, you're like, ooh, I'm gonna grab the wheat thins, and I'm gonna grab a couple of other things because I'm gonna grab this like Entenmann's cake, and I'm gonna grab this box of cookies too because chocolate, and because soft and salty and sweet, and you are just tunnel visioned. All you can think about is getting home, sitting on the couch, and eating that food. Maybe even you can't wait that long, and in the car, you actually open up that bar of chocolate and start eating it because the feeling the urgency, the uncomfortable feeling within your body is so just hard to sit with that you need to have that piece of chocolate to soothe you, because you know that you'll feel better once you start to eat. You get home and you're like, I know I have all this food in the fridge that I should cook for a full dinner, but no, you just sit right on the couch and all you can think about is that you deserve this. You've had such a long day. I just want to put on the TV. I just want to open this bar of chocolate and these wheat thins and these cookies. And you are just going back and forth, sometimes one to the other, from salty to sweet, until you finish everything. There's no connection to hunger or full. The only desire that you have is to disconnect from the uncomfortable feeling that you're having, and to just soothe. All right. So the difference is, I'm not done. So even then you're like, I still am not mentally satisfied. So you're like, I need to go into the kitchen. You grab some nuts, maybe some dried fruit, and you start feeling sleepy. All of a sudden you realize like you're in this daze. It's kind of like you're now really foggy. You start to feel bloated. You start to feel puffy. You feel exhausted, and you just are like, I need to put myself to bed, completely numb to any emotions that you were feeling about the tough day at work you had, which I mean is a successful binge. That's the point. You can't even look at yourself in the mirror as you drag yourself to bed. And in the morning, you wake up bloated, in pain, and feeling a ton of guilt and shame weighing on you for what you did the night before. So there's a few key things about this story, this example, that make it different than the other things. Binge eating can be all of those things I mentioned before. It could be triggered by stress. It could be triggered by comfort. It could be triggered by something. It could be triggered by an event. But there's a few key things that make it different. So one of those is there's a feeling of urgency. This feeling of being driven or compelled to eat, like you're unable to stop even when you want to. And if you've ever been a binge eater, you know at times you want to stop, like you are even crying, wanting to stop putting food into your mouth, but you cannot. It's like something has overtaken your body. I used to call it like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde takes over your brain. I still call it that. That's just what I felt like it was for me. Another thing is it actually does help calm you down for a short time. You may feel calmer during or immediately after a binge because, like I said, that discomfort, anxious, erratic energy is now gone. And that is a lot of the driving force of why somebody may binge. It's usually a habit that's developed over time, and it's commonly linked to emotions or trauma. And people who are binge eating are, like I said, disconnected from their hunger and full cues. They choose to eat, they eat, they're automatic, it's switched on to do this act from something like a feeling. The individual finds this whole experience extremely upsetting, sometimes disturbing, distressing for sure, and they feel extreme shame and guilt about it. They feel so much shame and guilt that it's usually not done in public. It's usually done in private, in secret, or hidden. And the last thing I have, which makes it the biggest thing to stand out, is that it's disruptive to the individual's life. Like they start planning their life around their binges. They have to cancel plans or call out work because they're too sick or they're too ashamed to go out after consuming all of this food. I know people who have even been fired because they have not been able to show up to work because they've canceled or they've called out sick so many times. Note that I didn't mention the quantity of calories, although binge eating has been associated with eating a large amount of calories, thousands and thousands of calories in one sitting. But I believe that a binge is personal to an individual. So it's not so much how much quantifies as a binge, it's more like the behavior and the feeling around what is causing the binge that for me made it. So the other thing I did not mention, is that the person does not have to be overweight or look obese in order to binge eat, in order to be considered a binge eater. So you can look a certain way that may be socially accepted as in shape or thin or small, and this person may still practice the binging. Pardon me. So that's what differentiates binge eating from all these other types of ways of using food. But the thing that unites them all, and I said this at the beginning, so you had the spoiler alert, is all of these ways of using food are disconnecting from your body, are disconnecting from your senses, disconnecting from what your body is trying to message you that it needs in the moment. The disconnection is not listening to the internal cues that your body is trying to tell your brain. Maybe you have not even felt those internal cues, acknowledged, connected to the fact that your body does give you internal cues in many years, and you forgot how to hear them. You forgot what that feels like. It's also relying on external cues to tell you what and how much to eat, like feeling obligated to say yes out of wanting to please or not displease others. So, like I mentioned earlier, it's the disconnect from what your body needs in the moment, what your body is trying to tell you that it truly needs. And maybe it has nothing to do with food. Maybe it has everything to do with not honoring the true you, not standing up for yourself when you know that that's how you should have spoken in that conversation. Maybe it is the fact that you need some actual companionship. Maybe you need to speak some truth. Maybe there's something that you are not acknowledging that has just been growing and you've been sweeping it under the carpet for many years. Maybe you need a hug. Maybe you need to call a friend. Maybe you just need to move your body and get that feeling out. Maybe you need to get some fresh air, right? Like maybe you need some water. Maybe you need a nap. All of these needs, your body has cues to tell you, and they all feel different. But if you have shut off that message system and have always looked outside yourself to tell you what it is that you need, or you have had such a betrayal of trust with your own self that you don't know, that you don't trust when your body is sending you those messages, then using food is a way that you may have developed as a coping mechanism. So this is more an informative chat, and I hope that you got some value from it. I know it's a bit long, but I thought it was important. And I have a list of questions. I'm only going to ask 3, and you can use this as a takeaway to check in with yourself. So the first question is, when do I feel out of control with food? And I would love for you to spend your own time journaling on this. The second question you can ask yourself is, what's the most way to nourish myself right now? And nourish could mean anything from food to a hug. And the third question I'm going to have you journal on is, what does it feel like when my body is telling me it is satisfied? What does it feel like when my body is telling me it feels satisfied, satiated? And that may take some practice of feeling into what that feels like. So I hope that I see you on Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern for the workshop. It's totally free, 3 practices I used to end emotional eating from a recovered binge eater, yes. And if you sign up with the link, which will be either in the description box or in my bio, whatever, it's either in either of those places, then you will get the link for the workshop emailed to you, and that's where you will go on Saturday. So I look forward to seeing you there, and have an amazing day. I thank you for hanging out with me for this long. All right, bye guys, have a great day.